"I feel nothing" is one of the most common things people say about their own emotions, and it's almost never literally true. There's a real psychological trait behind that feeling. It has a name, and understanding what's actually happening explains why it shows up, why it feels so hard to break, and what genuinely helps. The trait is called alexithymia, literally, no words for emotion. A Harvard psychiatrist named Peter Sifneos coined the term in 1972, and it isn't a diagnosis on its own. It's a trait that sits on a spectrum, showing up more in some mental health conditions and less in others, and researchers estimate somewhere between 5 and 13% of people score high enough on it to notice. The core problem isn't feeling nothing. It's difficulty identifying, naming, and describing whatever is actually happening inside you. Here's the first thing research gets wrong about how people talk about this. The body is usually still reacting, even when the person insists they feel nothing. Studies using heartbeat detection tasks, asking someone to sense their own heartbeat without checking a pulse, consistently find that people high in alexithymia have measurably worse interoceptive accuracy, a weaker read on their own bodily signals. Their heart rate and skin conductance can still shift in response to something upsetting. The physiological reaction is there. What's missing is the translation from "my body just changed" into a word like anxious, or hurt, or embarrassed. Numbness, in a lot of cases, isn't an absence of emotion. It's a signal that never got labeled. Which points to the second finding, and it's one of the more replicated results in effective neuroscience. Naming an emotion changes what your brain does with it. In a well-known 2007 UCLA study, people looked at emotionally charged photos while getting their brains scanned. When they were asked to simply label what they saw, angry, afraid, activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat response hub, went down, while a region tied to verbal thinking picked up the work instead. Researchers call it affect labeling. The casual version is name it to tame it, and it holds up. Putting a feeling into words doesn't just describe the reaction, it changes the reaction. The catch is that naming an emotion only works if your vocabulary for emotions is actually specific. This is where a psychologist named Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on emotional granularity comes in. People differ a lot in how finely they can distinguish their own emotional states. Some people have only good and bad to work with. Others can tell the difference between irritated, disappointed, and anxious in the same rough moment. Higher granularity is consistently linked to better emotion regulation and better long-term mental and physical health. A lot of what gets reported as numbness is actually low granularity. There is a feeling. It's just filed under one enormous, unhelpful bucket labeled bad, which is close enough to no information to feel like nothing. None of this is fixed. Interoceptive accuracy and labeling skill both respond to practice. Pilot studies using short mindfulness-based interventions have found measurable improvements in how accurately people read their own bodily signals over just a few weeks. The mechanism is almost embarrassingly simple. Pay closer, more frequent attention to what's happening in your body and give it more specific words. And the skill improves the way any perceptual skill improves with use. This isn't about forcing yourself to feel something. It's closer to physical therapy for a signal that's already there, but weak. Now for the popular explanation everyone reaches for, because it's the one most people already believe. That constant scrolling and digital overstimulation is what's numbing an entire generation. It's a satisfying story, and there's a real mechanism behind it. Habituation, where repeated exposure blunts a reaction over time, is well established in psychology generally. But when researchers actually tested doom scrolling specifically against emotional desensitization in young adults, it did not come out as a significant predictor. The honest version is more boring and more useful. Chronic stress, burnout, unresolved trauma, and emotional neglect earlier in life are far better predictors of this kind of numbness than screen time alone. Blaming the phone lets the actual cause, usually something that needed attention and didn't get it, stay unexamined. So, if you catch yourself saying, "I feel nothing," the more accurate sentence is usually, "I feel something, and I can't identify it yet." Start by checking the body instead of the mood. Tight chest, shallow breath, restless hands are all data. Then reach for a more specific word than good or bad, even if the first attempt is only a guess. Do that enough times, and the two skills, reading the signal, naming the signal, both get sharper, the same way any skill does with repetition. None of this means numbness is a personal failure, and it's not permanent by default. It's a skill gap between a body that's still reacting and a vocabulary that hasn't caught up to it yet. Close that gap, and "I feel nothing" stops being the honest answer.